Good morning. Ms. Graham.
Thank you. Good morning, PC Tomlinson.
Morning.
Yesterday we were about to move on to the footage, so the evidence video timeline, and I'm going to start with that again this morning. And I'm going to play around 1 minute of footage, so it'll move by reasonably quickly. So it'll be from 7:20:39 to 7:21:38. So it's just 1 second short of 1 minute. But we'll just Miss Smith will get that onto the screen at the moment. At the same time, could I ask you to look at your spreadsheet? And I'll just let you know what it is I'm going to ask you to be looking at. So this 1 minute spans from the bottom of page 3 of the spreadsheet to the top of page 5.
Okay.
And if you start at the bottom of page 3, or towards the bottom of page 3, you'll see at 7:20:39, that's when the fish van stops at Hayfield Road.
Yeah.
And we've already seen that, and we've gone through it, but you'll see that. There's it looks like there's a person getting out of the driver's side. I think yesterday you said that was yourself.
Yeah.
Right. And then you'll see that Peyton's emergency button status is turned on at 7:20:42. And then the person who exited, it appears the person who exited the driver's side door on the smaller van, that's the fish van, moves around in front of the smaller van. Do you see that?
Yeah.
I think that's what you described to us yesterday, that you were doing.
Yeah.
Then if we turn on to page 4 of the spreadsheet, you'll see at 7:20:46, that's the first line on page 4, it says a person who had been standing at the rear of the larger police van, we've been calling that the transit, or you called it the 19, moves and walks behind the smaller police van towards the direction of the roundabout. Now, when we watch the footage, I'm going to ask you if you can see that person, if you recognise who that was, or if you know who that was. Now, that's one of the things I'll be asking you, but I'm going to ask you these again when we finish. And then moving on to 7:20:50, you'll see that there's an airwaves transmission. It's apparently from PC Alan Peyton, but it says inaudible. And I'm going to ask you to listen to that and maybe see if you can remember hearing it and remember what it said. Then 7:20:52, you'll see at that section the description of what we can see in the CCTV is that there is movement of persons visible through the trees towards the grassy area adjacent to Hayfield Road. And I'm going to ask you if you can either identify who those were or if you can see.
Yeah.
Then we'll see the Stephen K airwaves transmission, and you'll see the description of the CCTV. Another person who's been near the rear of the larger police van walks towards the smaller police van rear and then appears to pause momentarily. And I'm going to ask you about that person as well.
Okay.
And then we go on to 7:20:57. The persons who were at the grassy area, visible through the trees, appear to move backwards towards where the vehicles are. I'm going to ask you about that. And then 7:20:58 to 7:21. A person behind rear of smaller police van, that's the fish van, starts moving towards the larger police van. They're not passed by others. And again, I'm going to ask you if you can see that and tell me who that was. Then 7:21:02, it says there's an airwaves transmission from PC Peyton, officers injured, PC short mail. I'm going to ask you if you recognise that voice and if it is in fact PC Peyton. And then 7:21:03, you'll see that a number of persons appear behind the light-coloured car that stopped at the roundabout, and at least one person appears to fall over to the ground near the pavement on Hayfield Road. And again, I'm going to ask you if you could see that person and recognise them. And then 7:21:03 to 7:21:13, you'll see that there's a description there of the car moves forward quite quickly towards the roundabout and appears to skid round the roundabout to face back towards Hayfield Road. And at the same time this is happening, it appears the persons near the pavement possibly stand again or are joined by other persons, and there is some coming together and another fall towards the ground by one or more of the persons. So that seems to be a second fall. And I'll ask you about that. And then 7:21:14 to 17, a person can be observed moving at the rear of the smaller police van and moving towards the passenger side slowly. And I'll ask you who that is. Then your emergency status button is turned on. That's 7:21:19. And then 7:21:21 is an airwave by you, and you'll see that it says in the spreadsheet inaudible shouting. And I'm going to ask you a few questions about that.
Yeah.
So if you listen to that. And then finally, 7:21:34, again, you'll see an airwaves transmission which is said to be inaudible by you, and I'd like you to help us understand what you were saying there. And then you'll see at the top of page 5 of the spreadsheet, and this is the final moment, 7:21:38. This is said to be PC Alan Smith, Control Bravo 1 officers being punched to the back of the head, no obvious serious injuries, male secure on the ground. So although it's just 1 minute of footage, those are the areas I'm going to be asking you about. So as we go through it, I'm going to ask you to focus on the CCTV and what you can see there. And you may find it helpful if we play that footage, that 1 minute, twice.
Okay.
And then you'll see I'm going to ask you lots of questions about it.
Yep.
Right. Well, I'm going to ask Miss Smith to play that 1 minute. So that's the period from 7:20:39 to 7:21:38. But it may be slightly before when we start, but that's absolutely fine.
Control the Bravo, do we have a description? I missed it. It's described as male, black, well-built, 6 foot tall, wearing a white t-shirt, dark coloured jeans and carrying a very large knife. It's
Monday 4, control keep off, that's somebody activated the emergency button.
Officer Vanguard, PC Shot, Bravo.
Control acknowledge, officer injured.
What's the locate? We've just got blue lights stopped, Jason Tagala, could you approach him? Thank you! Control Bravo.
I will listen to that entire message, please.
One officer's been punched in the back of the head, no obvious serious injuries, male secure on the ground.
Thank you very much. PC Tomlinson, would it be helpful for you to see that footage again and to have the chance to concentrate on it? Or are you happy to answer questions now?
It's difficult to see what's going on in the footage. Anyway, I mean, I'm happy to watch it again. I don't think I'm going to pick anything else out of it, though.
All right. Well, what we'll do is, if we can go back to 7:20:46. So that's at the top of page 4 of the spreadsheet. And I'm going to ask Miss Smith to just play for around 6 or 7 seconds, please. So we'll start at 7:20:46.
Six foot tall, wearing a white t-shirt, dark coloured jeans and carrying a very large knife.
Thank you. Were you able to see at 7:20:46 the person who'd been standing at the rear of the larger police van moving towards a smaller van?
Yeah, I can see that, yeah.
Do you know who that was?
No, because when I've got out the van, I don't actually remember ever seeing anybody else other than PC Walker, but he was at the front of the van. So I don't know who that would be.
Right. It wasn't you, though.
No, it wasn't me.
And then, did you hear the transmission said to be by PC Alan Payton at 7:20:50? Now, the spreadsheet that you have in front of you says inaudible.
Yeah.
Did you actually hear what was being said?
Yeah, but I'll play that again just so I could.
All right,
I
so
could
that's
listen to that.
7:20:50, so perhaps if we could play. Thank you.
Right. It's
Commander 4, control.
That's fine, thank you. Could you make anything out there?
No, no. I don't even recognise it as PC Payton's voice. Like, I don't know who I think that. I wouldn't be able to say because I don't know what the word is
That's
or what the
absolutely
sound
fine.
is.
We've not heard from PC Payton himself yet. And then I'm going to ask you about 7:20:52. So if we could maybe go back to around that area. And this is where it said in the spreadsheet there is movement of persons visible through the trees towards the grassy area adjacent to Hayfield Road. So you should at that moment, 7:20:52, see some movement between the trees. And I'd like you, if you can, to identify who those people are. So we'll play that.
Commander 4.
You're nodding. Did you see that movement?
Yeah, I've seen the movement. It's difficult to see because I know the tree is unfortunately placed kind of slap bang in the centre where we're looking. I would say that the person to the left of the tree, kind of where the video was paused just now, is probably Mr. Boyle, given the position. And you can see kind of movement to the right of the tree, which I would think would be me, given my position, but I don't know who else would be there, if that makes sense.
Okay. Do you want to have a look at it again? Would
Please,
that help?
yeah.
Yes. So that's 7:20:52. If we get it close enough, that'll be absolutely fine. That'll be fine.
Right.
Thank you.
It's
Commander 4, control, keep on.
Thank you. Did that help at all?
I would think that was me.
Right. So Mr. Bio to the left, and
Yeah.
you behind.
And me to kind of where the tree kind of splits into two with the branches, and you can see the two sort of dots on the screen. I think it's Mr. Boyle to the left and me to the kind of right hand side, but I can't identify anybody else in and around me. I know there's movement, but I couldn't say who that was.
Okay, that's absolutely fine, thank you. And then I'd like to look at 7:20:57, and the description in the spreadsheet says the persons who were at the grassy area visible through the trees appear to move back towards where the vehicles are. And we're actually right on that second. It might actually be easier to go back a second or two if we may, and we'll show you that. That'll be fine, thank you. So we're looking at 7:20:57. We'll play it now.
Commander 4, control, keep off. That's something activated the emergency button.
Thank you. And you saw did you see the people moving back the way towards Hayfield Road, away from the
Yeah.
tree area?
Could we play that again?
Yes.
Is that all right?
7:20:57. Thank you.
Media 4, control keep off. That's somebody activated the emergency button.
Thank you.
Having seen the movement of the figure to the right of that side of the tree, I don't know if that is me, because I don't remember ever moving that far, if that makes sense.
Who do you think it was?
Well, I'm not sure. I wouldn't be able to say who that is, but I thought it was initially me because of where the figure was seen to be kind of standing. But then as the video plays on, I'm not actually sure if that is me.
All right. And then I'd like to look at the time period 7:20:58 to 7:21, and the description for that period is the person behind the rear of the smaller police van starts moving towards the larger police van, not passed by anyone. So I'm now going to ask you to focus your attention on the vans, if you don't mind, and we'll play that period 7:20:58 to 7:21. We're going to start at 55 seconds.
Media 4, control keep off. That's somebody activated the emergency button.
Thank you. Did you see people moving between the vans?
Yeah, I thought I seen two figures kind of moving from the small fish van towards the big 1.9 van. Neither one of those figures was me, but I wouldn't be able to say who they are.
But neither was you.
Neither was me, because I didn't move towards, like, I never went from the fish van towards the 1.9 van.
Okay. And then can we go back to 7:21, and I'm going to ask you to play 7:21:02. We've heard this airwaves transmission, and we hear officers injured, PC short male. And I'm going to ask you just about that voice, if we can listen to that again. Thank you. Do you recognise that voice?
Yeah, that's the voice of PC Petton.
Thank you. And then can we go back to 7:21:03? And you'll remember the description here in the spreadsheet describes a car moving forward quite quickly towards the roundabout and appearing to skid round the roundabout to face back towards Hayfield Road. At the same time this is happening, it appears the persons near the pavement possibly stand again or are joined by other persons, and there is some coming together and another fall towards the ground by one or more of the persons. Sorry, I've gone too far forward there. I should be on 7:21:03. I'm reading out the wrong thing. Sorry, 7:21:03. So this is where we are on the footage. Reads, a number of persons appear behind the light-coloured car that stopped at the roundabout, and at least one person appears to fall over to the ground near the pavement on Hayfield Road. So this is the first time in the spreadsheet there's mention of a fall.
Okay.
And it says a number of persons appear behind the light-coloured car that stopped at the roundabout, and at least one person appears to fall over to the ground near the pavement on Hayfield Road. So again, I'm going to ask you to look at the CCTV, and I'll ask you if you can identify anyone. And so that's 7:21:03. And if we can stop that there. Now, we were right on 7:21:03. Do you want to go back and look at that again?
Please.
Yes. Could we maybe go back to 7:21? Or that's fine, actually.
Media 4, control keep off. That's somebody activated the emergency button.
Thank you. Did you see that fall, or would you like to see it again?
No, I seen the initial fall and then what looks to be now a second fall, just as we've kind of stopped there.
Who's there?
from obviously my recollection is that the first fall would have been PC shot, being struck and then fallen to the ground. It's quite difficult to see on the actual footage because it's so grainy. But I would be close by to the figure that stood over, or seems to be standing up, and then again from my recollection that the second fall would be the point at which Mr. Boyle has been taken to the floor. So that would be myself and PC Walker.
Can we look at that again, please? We'll just go back to 721 or close to 2103. So you said you were close by. Where were you at that point? Were you visible on the CCTV? Or were you behind the police van, one of the police?
I would have been behind. Well, I would have thought you would have seen me on the CCTV footage because I would, as I said, when PC Short's been knocked to the ground, I would have been either running or like very close by. So I don't know if I can necessarily pick myself out on the CCTV.
Well, let's watch that again for a moment. So we're watching for 721:03, but we're starting just prior to that.
Control, keep off. That's somebody activated the emergency button.
Officer Van John, PC shot.
Can you see who's there at that time?
Again, it's difficult to see, but I would say probably the figure standing on the left is potentially me. It's so hard to pick out because of the way that the video's blurred, but I don't know who the figure on the right is. And I don't even know if that's a figure in the centre. It's because of the way it's, again, sort of blending in with the back of the van. But no, it would be a guess of me to try and pick out
I'm just
individuals.
wondering if, having seen this footage, you wanted to change anything you said yesterday. You talked yesterday, as I understand it, of you being closer to Mr. Byle when he was in the tree grassy area. He went past you towards PC Short,
Yeah.
who was on the road.
Yeah.
And you came from the treed area, the grass area, towards where she had fallen.
Yes.
So if you thought that was you standing on the right, that wouldn't seem to tie in, as my understanding of what you said yesterday.
No, that on the video can't be me on the right because I wouldn't have passed that point. So, what I said yesterday is what I remember, but from this video it's confusing because it's not clear enough to really figure out what's going on.
All right. So you can't explain what we can see here on the CCTV?
Not properly. No, it's not, for me. It's not clear enough to accurately give you a description of what I can see.
Looking at that CCTV, how many people do you think are there?
I think 3, but I don't know. Like, see the figure on the right. I don't ever remember seeing anybody else, so I don't know like what distance that figure would be kind of set back. But from that, I think I see 3 people standing.
Okay. But you're not able to provide an explanation. Right. We're going to carry on, so from 721:03 to 721:13. This is the lengthy description where there's the mention of the car moving forward quite quickly towards the roundabout and appears to skid round the roundabout to face back towards Hayfield Road. At the same time this is happening, it appears the persons near the pavement possibly stand again or are joined by other persons, and there is some coming together and another fall towards the ground by one or more of the persons. Okay. So this is the second fall that appears in the spreadsheet. So let's look at that section. That's 721:03 to 721:13. And we're just prior to 721:03, so we'll just play from there.
Officer Van John, PC shot. Bravo. Control acknowledge, officer injured.
What's the okay?
Thank you. Would you like to see that again?
No, I think I'm all right.
Right. Who do we see there?
So the second fall would be the point at which Mr. Boyle has been taken to the ground. So again, because the video isn't very clear, but obviously I was there, so my recollection is that would be myself, kind of following at the back, PC Walker and Mr. Boyle initially. But because of the way that the footage is, you can't really pick it out. It's just like a kind of blood sort of blob on the screen. So.
Could we watch that again, please? 7:21:03 to 7:21:13. Thank you.
PC shot, Bravo.
Control acknowledge, officer injured.
Thank you. When you said you were behind, does it appear there's a person on the left and a person on the right there as we look at the CCTV?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to see, but that's what I think.
Which one would be you?
So if you're looking at the screen just now, I would be the one on the left, because that would be where Mr. Boyle's legs are.
And who would be on the right?
On the right would be PC Walker.
And so what we see there is Mr. Boyle being brought to the ground?
Yes.
And if we could now look at, we'll just start from this point and we'll continue to around 17 seconds.
What's the okay? We just got blue lights stopped, Jason Tagala could approach you.
Thank you. Now, can I go back to the spreadsheet? You'll see at 7:21:14 to 17 seconds, it says a person can be observed moving at the rear of the smaller police van, that's the fish van, and moving towards the passenger side slowly. And I'd like to go back to that, 7:21:14 to 17. I'd like you to focus on the vans and identify that person for us. Thank you, that's lovely.
What's the okay? We just got blue lights stopped, Jason Tagala could...
Were you able to see that?
I could see something, or people moving around, but I couldn't say who that was. I wasn't looking in that direction, so I wouldn't have any idea.
And then can we move on to 7:21? Well, it's 7:21:17. There's a transmission from PC Smith indicating it's got blue light. Roger, it's got blue light stopped adjacent to Gallagher's, and then it's inaudible. And then 7:21:19, it says PC Ashley Tomlinson's emergency status is turned to on, and we discussed that yesterday. That's the point at which your emergency status is turned to on. And then can I ask you to look at 7:21:21, and it says PC Ashley Tomlinson, and then this is the inaudible shouting.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you to listen to that part and tell us what you were saying. So it's from 7:21:21.
We just got blue lights stopped, Jason Tagala could approach you.
Let's stop that there. And that actually went on to 7 a little bit further. So listening to that now, yesterday we talked about your emergency status button going on, and you suggested that you pressed the button and said, "We're struggling to control, we need more units." But listening to that now, do you want to maybe revise that answer?
No, so see, the first time I've actually heard this audio, as obviously through the public inquiry, it's never been disclosed to me before. I remember pressing my emergency button, but hearing it has obviously allowed me to put myself back there like mentally. And I remember pressing it and saying we need more units, we're struggling to control, but when you listen to it, it's obviously that's not coming through. I wouldn't be able to say what I'm actually even saying. I don't think you can make it out. I thought the first word actually that I could make out was the word thank you, but I wouldn't have been saying thank you. So yeah, I don't know what I'm saying.
All right. And then can we look at 721:34? We could maybe just play that. And again, you'll see on the spreadsheet that, again, that's airwaves transmission said to be by you, but is again marked as inaudible. And I'm wondering if you can listen to it and tell us what you were saying this time.
Control Bravo, what else is this?
We'll go back to that, please. It's very brief. So it's 721:34. If it's easier to play it from an earlier moment, that's fine. Oh, 30, that's perfect. Thank you. Right, can you hear any of that?
Control Bravo, what
We
else
can
is
turn
this?
that off now, thank you.
I think I can hear well, I know it's my voice, but I don't know what exactly I'm saying. I think maybe the first word's we're,
Okay.
but I don't know what the second word is.
All right. And then we heard 721:38, which is the entry on the spreadsheet at the top of page 5, very top. It says PC Smith, and by that stage the mail is secure on the ground. Now, I'd like to go back to your inquiry statement, please, if I
Yep.
may. And you've given a detailed number of pages regarding the restraint, paragraphs 30 to 43, and that covers 2.5 pages. And yesterday we, I think, looked briefly at paragraph 30, and you started talking about the actions of PC Walker wrestling Mr. Bio to the ground. And you described it as being a dynamic movement. Do you remember that? I'd like to look at paragraph 31 now, please. And we've got that on the screen, and it says, due to the passage of time, I'm unable to recall in great detail the body positions of Mr. Bio. During the initial restraint, my recollection is that he was in the prone position. I do not know how long Mr. Bio was in this position, and to state a time would be guesswork, and this is both unprofessional and unhelpful in terms of the public inquiry. I do recall that due to the level of resistance being issued by Mr. Bio, his body position changed several times. Mr. Bio was able to take a bench press type position and lift himself from the ground, whilst attempts were being made to restrain him by PC Walker and I. Now, you say there that he was in the prone position.
Yeah.
And as I understand the definition of prone, that's lying flat, especially face downwards.
Yeah.
And that there may be some questions as to whether that differs from the demonstration you gave us yesterday. So this is at the point that PC Walker has brought Mr. Bio to the ground, and Mr. Bio's on the ground at that point. And so what was when you used the words, he was in the prone position in paragraph 31, what was your understanding of that word prone?
That he was lying on the ground, but like sort of face down, if that makes sense.
So that was your understanding as well?
That would be my understanding, yeah.
And you said the position changed a number of times?
Yeah, so that position is obviously the position that initially would have been, I suppose, the fall position, if I could call it that. But then that, because of Mr. Boyle struggling, that position very quickly changed, like almost instantly, from being flat on the ground to, as I kind of demonstrated yesterday, having like that and being able to lift himself up. And that was the opportunity for me to try and take control of the wrist. I don't know how long that all took, because it seemed to, in my mind, it just seemed to last forever. But I know in reality, it was going very fast.
So at the point that you were straddling his legs,
Yeah.
which you demonstrated yesterday, that was when he had his right hand palm down on
Yeah.
the ground. Up until then, he'd been prone, flat.
I don't know if he'd been
Or initially flat.
Initially flat, but because, as I said, my initial focus was on Mr. Byles' legs and delivering the strikes to the Achilles area, so I wasn't paying attention to what his upper body was doing, so his legs, and then obviously when I've got on his legs and straddled them, that's obviously when I've seen what I believed was an opportunity to take control of a wrist. So at that point, when I've obviously glanced up, he's not been in what I would describe the prone position. He's been in like a press-up style position like that. So that's what I've tried to use to gain some control by putting a handcuff on, and that would be on the right wrist.
Right. And you mentioned a press-up. I did want to ask you about the phrase, Mr. Byle was able to take a bench press type position and lift himself from the ground whilst attempts were being made to restrain him by PC Walker and I. Now, when you wrote a bench press position, what was your understanding of that?
Like, I suppose for me, a bench press and a press-up position, it's the same movement. So you lie on a bench and you would bench press in the gym, so it'd be like that.
Yeah.
Or a press-up, obviously, you're lying like that, but again, it's the same movement,
Right.
the pushing out of the arms.
Well, that may be clear. Could you maybe demonstrate both positions for us?
Yep.
There may be some issue about what you're talking about.
Okay.
So I'll just ask you to come out and first of all do a press-up position, please.
Okay.
And so you're face down with both hands palm flat on the ground.
Yeah.
And could you now demonstrate a bench press position? And
Like
you're
that at the gym.
lying on your back and your arms are moving vertically upwards away from your chest.
Yeah.
Normally there'd be a weight, a bar with
yeah.
weights at either end. Thank you, that's very clear. So you've used both references today when we were talking. So when you said in paragraph 31, he was taking a bench press type position, lifting himself from the ground whilst attempts were being made to restrain him. Do you mean a bench press type position or a press up type position?
It would be a press-up type position. The bench press, what I've probably tried to describe there, or what I have tried to describe there, is the movement of the arms and the kind of coming from like that position to that position. That's what I'm trying to like describe, is that kind of movement.
And we may have heard, and we may also hear from others talking about a press-up type position.
Yeah.
Is it fair for me to say that you're talking about the same sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, whilst I go to the gym, I would probably use them as interchangeable. I know they're not interchangeable, and obviously one's on back and one's on front, but it's what I'm trying to get at there is the movement of sole of the arms.
There's weight trainers all around the world screaming at the moment.
Probably.
Okay. So you've talked about attempts being made to restrain him by PC Walker and I. So was this at the point he's doing the press-up type position? This is at the point that you and PC Walker are trying to restrain him to the ground.
Yeah.
There was only the two of you at this moment.
That I can remember, yeah, that there was, I felt like it was just me and PC Walker.
Do you remember PC Payton being there?
No.
Is it possible that PC Payton was also there?
I mean, PC Walker's back was blocking my position. I don't ever remember him being there. So I mean, it's possible, but again, I don't think I could answer that because I couldn't actually see past.
Right. So if the chair has heard that Mr. Bile was doing a press-up with 3 officers attempting to restrain him, that's possible, but you don't recollect.
I don't know. I don't. It's possible, but I don't have that recollection.
Thank you. How were you trying to restrain Mr. Bile at the time he was trying to do his press-up type position?
So it's kind of as I've described yesterday. So that's obviously the position of his right arm. So my attempt to restrain would have been to take my left hand, go around the wrist in a kind of C motion. So you've got that to control the movement of the wrist, and that would allow me my right hand free, because on the right hand side of my utility belt is where my handcuffs are positioned. So once I've taken control, I'm trying to pull that wrist and the arm back so that I can come round, and it would be that motion so that I wasn't getting tangled up, and put the top cuff onto the wrist, and that would allow me then to click that in and then bring the arm around and try and secure in a rear stack.
So as you were gripping his right wrist,
Yeah.
was his back pushed up off the ground?
Well, it must have been, because he was the way his arm was. It wouldn't have been flat to the floor, because that allowed me to get kind of in and grab.
And when you were trying to grab his right wrist, where was your left arm?
So it would have been. So if you've got that just over the top, but like grabbing.
Where was your elbow?
My elbow, it would have been straight, because I couldn't, to bend my elbow, I would have been off balance and I would have been falling forward. Whereas if I've got that and I've got a straight elbow, it gives me a stability, because that hand is on the pavement, so I can use that as obviously my base, if that makes sense. So straight, and then it allows me to come in.
Mm-hmm. So had you leaned over the top of Mr. Bile's arm, or under, between his arm and his body?
I think it would have probably it wouldn't have been over, it must have been under, because I don't think I had enough reach to get round.
So between his arm and his body?
Yeah.
Towards the ground?
When you do that, there's obviously a natural space created there, and that would have been, so if you can imagine, this hand's not coming from this side, but coming from behind, it would have been like that, and then to try and pull back.
And you were straddling his legs at that time?
Yeah.
So what of your weight was on Mr. Bile?
Not very much, because where I'm grabbing, probably a lot of my weight was on his wrist, to try and, because I would have been having to lean as well, lean across to get that. So my weight would have been primarily on my knees,
So
through my hand.
You've
and
talked about you being on your knees.
Yeah.
And you've talked about grabbing his right wrist.
Yeah.
With you're demonstrating with your left hand. So where was the weight of your body, your hips, your torso?
It would have been primarily going through my own knees, because
when Mr. Bile was pressing up to try and lift his body off the ground?
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine I put that much of my own weight. Probably wasn't the most stable position for me to be in, which is obviously why I subsequently lost balance when he flicked his legs, and that jerking movement has caused me to then lose my grip of the handcuffs.
And what level of force, can you describe the level of force you were using to try and grab his right wrist whilst balancing on your knees and leaning through with your left hand?
I was trying to pull the wrist back, and I thought I was using enough force to do that, but it would have just been through my just the strength of my bicep muscle, trying to pull back, but that wasn't enough force to pull back. 'Cause his hand was just going kind of.
So you don't think you were using any force from your leg muscles or your back? just from your bicep?
I don't know how I would use my leg on my back to pull with my arm.
Okay. Did you consider shouting to someone to get an ambulance?
At that point, I didn't have any opportunity even to do that. When I've tried to obviously shout on the radio, I thought my messages came through saying we need more units. Obviously, from the transmission, it's not came through. But at that point, there was nothing to suggest we needed an ambulance. We were still in the process of trying to control him.
Okay. And you were in the process of trying to control him, and that was you and at least PC Walker.
Yeah.
Now, in paragraph 33, you say, I'm unable to say without guessing exactly how much weight I applied to Mr. Bio. My body position was on his legs, and as such, the weight and force I applied would have been focused in this area. It would have been physically impossible for me to apply all my body weight to Mr. Bio, given the positions I've described in point 32. Due to the passage of time, I'm unable to state how long I applied restraint to Mr. Bio. I am aware from my recollection that Mr. Bio had handcuffs applied. I do not recall who applied the handcuffs or to whom the handcuffs belong. Due to the passage of time, I'm unable to recall the detail in which Mr. Bio's handcuffs were applied. So you've talked to us about your handcuffs bouncing away out of reach.
Yeah.
So at some point, someone else has produced handcuffs
Yeah.
and applied them. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
But you don't remember who that was?
No, I was. I think I was surprised actually we even managed, or I say we, that handcuffs had even been applied. I just remember losing my handcuffs and then being aware that he now had handcuffs on.
Was it PC Walker, as far as you could tell?
I don't know who it would have been.
So had other officers arrived at the point of the handcuffs being applied?
I don't know, because basically, see, when I lost my handcuffs, my focus then was on trying to control his legs. So I wasn't actually then paying that much attention, and I was trying to actually shout up for more units. I mean, when you look at the CCTV, I think probably when I've shouted that up, they've maybe already been there, or certainly the airwave transmissions would suggest that. But as I say, it felt like we were there on our own, and it was lasting forever.
Okay. Can we look at the next paragraph, paragraph 35?
Yeah.
Mr. Bio was making continued efforts to break free from the restraint and using his strength to lift myself and PC Walker upwards.
Yeah.
So at that time, he was using his strength to lift both you and PC Walker upwards,
Yeah.
away from the ground.
Yeah.
And how was he managing to do that?
Just with the kind of like the bench press, the press up
The press
position.
up.
Aye.
Right.
And where my position was on his legs, you can still, even with that type of restraint, you can still get lifted up by a person's legs, just because your legs are quite strong muscles. So actually, you do get lifted up. So that's what I remember feeling, being the feeling of being like moved away from the ground and lifted up.
Now, earlier when we looked at paragraphs 33 and 34, you were talking about the handcuffs being applied. When we're looking at paragraph 35 and Mr. Bio using his strength to lift you and PC Walker upwards, were the handcuffs applied at that moment? Or were the handcuffs after this moment?
I couldn't say with any degree of accuracy. I just remember the continued like resistance to, like, I was trying to restrain him. So I don't know exactly what point the handcuffs had been on. The first I became aware of the handcuffs being on is obviously when other units were there. But I don't know exactly what point the handcuffs were applied.
Okay. Can I look at paragraph 39, please?
Yeah.
So this is towards the bottom of that page. And it says, during the restraint, I recall that PC Alan Smith attempted to apply a fast strap, which is a leg restraint, to Mr. Bio. I'm aware of this because I recall my leg being pulled backwards and felt pressure being applied as if it was being gripped or wrapped. I recall being confused about what was going on and shouting in the direction of PC Smith. Someone had grabbed my leg, having mistaken it for that of Mr. Bio's. I was aware other officers had arrived during the restraint, but my focus was on trying to maintain control of Mr. Bio's legs. Due to the passage of time, and I'm unable to recall in any further detail what individual officers were doing. I was aware PC Walker was also carrying out restraint of Mr. Bio. So I think you mentioned leg restraints yesterday.
Yeah.
And are fast straps the same as leg restraints?
Yeah, again, probably just an interchangeable term. Yeah, I would just call them fast straps.
Right. And it was PC Smith that was attempting to apply the fast straps?
As I recall, yeah.
So he'd arrived at this point?
Yeah, I don't know when he'd arrived. I just remember being aware of PC Smith, as I say, when my leg was grabbed, because I didn't actually know who had grabbed it, what was going on. And I remember being really confused because I had no idea why my leg was now being grabbed.
You've described your position. You've described PC Walker's position. Where was PC Smith in relation to both of you?
So you mean when my leg was grabbed?
When he arrived, and you've talked about him attempting to put on the fast strap.
So the first I've been aware, obviously PC Smith, is when my leg's been grabbed, and then I've kind of looked around as I've been shouting, someone's got my leg. So PC Smith would have been at the feet area, so behind my back and towards the feet.
So by this stage, you are not simply straddling Mr. Bio with your knees.
No.
You've moved into the next position,
I've
which
moved
you
into
demonstrated yesterday, with your legs to the side.
Yeah, so
Right.
you would splay your legs out to give you more balance, otherwise you become, again, unbalanced. So I tend to kick one leg forward and then bend one leg, and then that gives you a greater kind of surface area contact with the road, and it stops you getting moved about as much.
And that's what you demonstrated yesterday.
Yeah.
So it was at that point that PC Smith has arrived, or
Yeah.
you're aware of him, and you're aware of him trying to apply fast straps.
Yeah, but the fast straps, I think initially were being applied to me.
Right. Well, you've used the words, your legs were gripped or wrapped. Sorry, my leg being pulled backwards, and I felt pressure being applied as if it was being gripped or wrapped. What does that mean?
So the grip, or I wasn't sure if it was, so see when you apply fast straps, you have to wrap them round, and you basically wrap them round tightly. But I couldn't figure out if it was the wrapping I could feel or whether someone had came across and grabbed. So when I refer to my leg, I actually probably mean my ankle more, so it's like that. I remember feeling that getting grabbed.
Right. So it was one ankle got grabbed.
Yeah.
And you may have felt the wrap, as in the leg strap, the leg restraints being applied. To the
Yeah,
fast
I don't know
straps.
if it was just simply the grab or the leg restraint.
I wonder if you could look at some fast straps, leg restraints, please. Do these look familiar to you?
Yeah, they're normally in a little pouch.
Right.
I think yesterday I kind of described having them docked here on my body armour. They wouldn't normally come out like this either, because they're all now tangled up.
Sorry.
No, that's all right. The way I store them is, so they're effectively a long strap, Velcro, hooks on one side and loops on the other. And you tend to either have it rolled up in a way that all the hooks are on the outside for both straps. Otherwise, you end up in a situation where you then
Stick
pull them
together.
Yeah. So the idea is, once they're wrapped, if they're wrapped in the packet, like that, so all the straps are all the hooks are to one side. What it allows you to do is very quickly open, and then you would, I don't know how to demonstrate it, but you would effectively then like wrap them, and so in naturally doing that, the hooks then meet the loops and it sticks together.
Would you find it easier if you came out into the middle and maybe put your legs out in front of you yourself and demonstrated for the chair and the assessors? Thank you. Remember, I'll have to speak as the audio to be picked up.
I've never applied them to myself.
Just really as a demonstration for the chair and the assessors so you're sliding them underneath your own legs. Is the smooth side touching your trousers?
It doesn't really matter which side.
Right.
I've just done that because it's sticking to the carpet.
Right.
It's not sticking to my trousers. But you would then
Right. So they're they stick together quite effectively.
So that is me now.
And that ties someone's legs together.
Yeah.
So they're slid under the legs and wrapped round the legs.
Yeah.
And that's the sensation that you felt, was it? When it was your ankle was gripped or wrapped.
Yeah.
Thank you. Come back to the microphone, please. And could we briefly look at perk 263, page 5, paragraph 6. And I think in your perk statement, so that's page 5, paragraph 6, the one that begins the ambulance, there we go. I think you say that the fast straps were to his lower knee. Let me just see if I can find that position. Yes, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Line 10 of that paragraph. So that's the paragraph beginning, the ambulance had already arrived.
Yeah.
And it's line 10, so it's just 3 up from the bottom. Or, sorry, it's slightly further up than that. We put him onto a stretcher on his back, still handcuffed to the front, and one fast strap to his lower knee.
Mm.
So is that the position that the fast straps had been applied, that you could see?
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember now where they were applied, but if that's what I've said in my statement, then that's where they've been applied.
And did you have 2 fast straps, one in front of you, but you used one on yourself?
Yeah, just I couldn't, like, I'm not flexible enough to get, like, further down.
But no, absolutely no problem. What I meant was the one you used, that was one fast strap.
Yeah, that was just one fast strap.
Thank you.
You could link them together, like if you've got an individual that's particularly.
So they stick
large.
to each other as well as sticking to other
you
things.
could make a longer strap as well, but in that instance, we just used the straps individually.
Right. So, thank you. That can be taken off the screen. So once the handcuffs are applied, and then the fast strap or fast straps are applied, was it at that point that the officers had control of Mr. Bio?
Yeah, effectively.
Right. Now, we've heard that you pressed your emergency button at 7:21:19. And I just want to be clear, what were you doing, what position were you in when you pressed your emergency button?
So I'd gone from, my recollection is I'd gone from the straddle position to the, like, lying.
The lying.
The kind of lying across. Because what that does is it allows me obviously to balance, but then use my free hand to push, and then I can then brace myself like that. But it also, like, being in that position it does allow me to use my hand to access my radio if I needed to use it.
So Mr. Bio was already on the ground by the time you pressed your emergency button.
Yeah.
How long had he been on the ground by the time you pressed that button?
I don't know.
Can you give us an estimate?
As I said, for me it felt like we'd been there forever. But I don't know. We're talking maybe seconds. But that would just be a guess.
All right, I don't want you to guess.
No, that's the thing. I couldn't say with any accuracy.
All right. How long after you pressed your emergency button did you remain over Mr. Bio's legs?
Until the fast straps had been applied.
And once they'd been applied, what did you do?
So I then went to basically the side. So like, if Mr. Bio was lying, I would then have gone to the side. I don't know if it was left or right, but I've gone to a side so that when we roll Mr. Bio onto his side, it gives me access then to, one, assist in the rolling, and two, to then carry out a search.
So you get off his legs.
Yep.
He's then rolled to the side. Which
Yep.
side was he rolled onto?
I think left, because I would need to maybe refer back to my original statement. Whatever side it was on, I searched the pocket of the opposite side.
Right. And when you say you searched the pocket, what were you looking for?
A knife,
What did you find?
a chewing gum, and so that was in, I think it was his, from what I remember, I think it was in his right, that pocket, whatever you would call that pocket, right trouser pocket, and there was also a gold mobile phone, but
Where was
I don't remember the mobile phone coming out of a pocket. I remember it being already out, so I wasn't sure if it was Mr. Biles or if it was like a member of the public or if it was one of the cops' phones. I just remember I think it was gold.
Okay. Did you find any knife?
No, but I didn't also have time to search the opposite side.
So he was on one side and you searched the pocket on the opposite side.
Yeah.
The side that was exposed.
The side
you
that
were
was
able to
exposed,
see.
yeah, so it gave me an opportunity to carry out a search.
Now, can we look at paragraph 44 of your statement, please? And this says, due to the passage of time, my recollection as to the exact point Mr. Bio lost consciousness is no longer clear. From my recollection, Mr. Bio was handcuffed to the front in a palm-to-palm position, wearing leg restraints. So this is the point at which the handcuffs and the leg restraints are on.
Yeah.
I recall Mr. Bio was on his side, having been searched for possession of a knife. That was by you?
Yeah, that was by me, yeah.
At this time, I would have been somewhere near Mr. Bio's legs. As soon as it was recognised Mr. Bio had lost consciousness, CPR was carried out immediately. I did not continue to restrain Mr. Bio at this time. However, I remain vigilant to the fact he could regain consciousness and may need to be restrained again if he continued to resist his arrest.
Yeah.
I'm interested in when he stopped moving. So you describe him being moved onto his side.
Yeah.
Had he stopped moving prior to being moved onto his side?
No, I don't think so. So like the leg restraint's been applied to the legs because that's the area that I was at, and mobilised the legs. So for me, the legs had obviously stopped like thrashing about to the extent they were initially, but I wasn't obviously at the upper half of Mr. Bio, so I couldn't say the point in which obviously he lost consciousness.
So you don't remember when he lost
No.
consciousness? Do you remember when he stopped moving
No.
or stopped struggling?
No. Because it all happened, like I said, the restraint all happened so quickly, and we were in so many different positions. It's difficult to like pick out exactly when.
Looking back now, was your impression that he'd lost consciousness before he was turned on his side or after?
After.
After. Why do you say that?
Because I'm sure that an officer, I can't remember who, and again I'd have to rely on my original statement, I'm sure someone was checking, because there was an officer at the head, checking that.
Who was that?
I wouldn't say it was PC Smith.
We may hear that PC Payton was towards the head of Mr. Bile.
Aye. I know there was an officer at the head. I thought it was PC Smith, but I could be mistaken in that.
But you say as soon as it was recognised Mr. Bile had lost consciousness, so how soon was it that it was recognised that he'd lost consciousness after he was turned on his side?
Again, I don't know. Like I wouldn't be. It would be a guess if I kind of I give an answer.
And who started CPR?
From what I remember, I think it was PC Walker. I think.
Okay. And again, can we look briefly at your PERC statement, page 5? This time it's paragraph 2. And it says Craig Walker started CPR. Alan Payton and Alan Smith tried to apply the mouthpiece, which would allow them to give breaths. They couldn't manage to get it in properly. I think they were carrying out spells, 30/2, but Alan Smith got contaminated with something from the man and rinsed out his mouth with his hand sanitizer before getting a glass of water from a resident nearby. Craig and Alan Payton did the CPR between them, and they were getting tired. I heard Craig mention that there were broken ribs from the CPR he heard breaking. Now, this isn't mentioned in your inquiry statement, but is it fair to... Yesterday you told us your memory was fresher when you gave this statement to PERC on the 4th of June 2015. So would this paragraph be correct?
Yeah, aye.
And would the chair, if the chair is looking at this, should he prefer this
Should prefer
statement?
my original statement, yeah, because it was fresh in my mind at the time.
Right. And so do you, reading that now, that paragraph, do you remember this happening?
No, not really.
No. Tell us what spells is.
So spells is, I can't remember what actually the acronym stands for, but it's basically like your I think it might actually stand for Scottish Police Emergency Life Saving
Support?
or Life Support or something along those lines. It's basically something that I would refer to like first aid, like the first aid that we get taught, and that includes obviously like placing bandages on people, tourniquets, treating them if someone goes into shock, finding out like body positions and things like that to put people in like recovery position. And the reference to 30/2 at the back of that is when you carry out CPR, so it's 30 chest compressions to 2 breaths. So that's what I mean when I say 32.
Right. And then there was an issue with Miss PC Smith. We've not heard from PC Smith yet. We should be hearing from him soon. And you say, I heard Craig mention that there were broken ribs from the CPR he heard breaking.
Yeah.
So do you remember that?
Having read this, again, I can't remember. This is obviously fresh in my mind at the time, but like this part of it now, looking back, I can't really remember. But Craig wouldn't have been saying it like to me. He would have been saying it to the other officer carrying out CPR. But I don't know who that other Alan Payton.
Well, we've heard that Alan Smith was involved with CPR.
So they would have been communicating with each other.
Right. Okay. At this point in time, when CPR is being performed, do you remember where PC Payton was?
No.
Where were you?
I think I was near Mr. Byles' legs or stood up near his legs. Like I was either kneeling down near his legs or stood up near his legs.
Right. Well, we'll come back to that. But I'd quite like to, I'll stay with this statement for the moment, please. And I'd like to go back to page 3. We looked at some of that yesterday.
Okay.
I'd like to look at the final paragraph. I'm going to read a number of paragraphs from the bottom of page 3 on to page 4. So if you have the copy in front of you, or you can use it, see it on the screen, I'm going to read it all and then I'm going to ask you some questions, if that's okay. So we'll start at the bottom of page 3. I struck him with my baton once to his head. It was to the left-hand side to his head, diagonally from the back of the head to his jaw. He stopped stomping on Nicole at that point. I think I hit him again, which was about 2 or 3 times in total to the head area. He turned around and took up a boxing sort of stance, with both fists clenched in at his chest. I thought he was going to attack me again, so I struck him 2 or 3 times with my baton to his arms. At that time, I thought he was trying to kill me, now after killing Nicole. Craig Walker came in at this point and grabbed the man like a bear hug and wrestled him to the floor. Craig was trying to control his arms, so I tried to get a hold of his legs, which were kicking out in the air. I struck the back of his legs at his Achilles area a few times, but he didn't stop, and it failed to control him. I threw my baton to one side and jumped on the legs to try and control him. The man was face down, Craig was on his back trying to control him, and I was on his upper thighs, straddled over him, trying to control his legs and facing his head. He started to bench press both of us and was incredibly strong. I tried to pull his right arm to stop him doing this, and he started to pull me in. He was overpowering us, and we were struggling to keep him on the floor. I would say Craig is about 20 stones, and he was still too powerful for us. He kept pulling me in, and I pushed the emergency button for assistance. My thoughts now were to try and get one of the handcuffs on him to control his arm, but he again flicked his legs, causing me to lose balance and drop my handcuffs, and I managed to get back onto the back of his legs, and at this point other officers started to arrive. I'd like to look back at the page 3 to the final paragraph. I'm just going to go through these paragraphs and ask you if you want to comment on anything.
Yep.
So you say, I struck him with my baton once to his head. He stopped stomping on Nicole at that point. I think I hit him again, which was about 2 or 3 times in total to the head area. Now, yesterday, when you were giving your evidence, you talked about that first strike with the baton.
Yeah.
And you said it didn't stop him, so I delivered 2 more baton strikes to that general area.
Yeah.
I don't know where it connected, but that stopped him, and you talked about that. So yesterday, you seemed to indicate that the first baton strike didn't stop him, and that's why you delivered 2 more.
Yeah.
In this statement, you seem to be saying you struck him, and he then stopped stomping on Nicole, and then you hit him again 2 or 3 times in total to the head. So
my fear there is it was going to continue, because just because he'd stopped, he didn't change his body position, he didn't move, and my fear was that he was going to actually, as I kind of described yesterday, reload, if and again deliver another stomp.
Right. So in this statement, you say, I hit him again 2 or 3 times in total to the head area. He turned around and took up a boxing sort of stance. So it was only after the 3rd strike with the baton that he changed his position.
Yeah, that he basically came away from a position that I would say was ready to, again, stomp on Nicole, already in a position to further injure or kill Nicole.
Right. I'm trying to work out, in relation to the stomping, how many stomps had taken place prior to the first strike to the head with the baton?
I know there was 2 stomps, but I don't know if he'd stomped twice already, or whether it was stomp and then as I've struck it was second stomp, if that makes sense.
Okay. Is that something you can remember clearly now?
Not now.
Okay. So should the chair prefer this version, or?
I would prefer the original version.
The original version. And then you've said, I was on his upper thighs, straddled over him. Now, yesterday, I think I understood you to say it was in the middle of his legs and his knees were under your bum. Here you seem to be talking about upper thighs. Sorry. If we go down slightly, you'll see the second paragraph on page 4. You see, I was on his upper thighs, straddled over him. So again, should the chair prefer your evidence yesterday or the evidence here?
I would go with my original statement, It's obviously just obviously I can't remember. But I thought, I haven't recalled yesterday, I thought it was more than the area, but if I've said that in my original statement, that'll be it.
That's fine. I'm just clarifying so the chair knows what to prefer. And then you talk about Craig was on his back trying to control him, and I was on his upper thighs, straddled over him, trying to control his legs and facing his head. And yesterday you talked about Craig being on Mr. Bio's upper body towards his left-hand side. Is there any difference between what you said yesterday and what you've said there? Because you say Craig was on his back trying to control him.
I see it says obviously he was on his back. He wasn't fully on his back, because if he had been fully on his back, I would never been able to reach and get the arm. So when I say he was on his back, he's on his in that general area. So to kind of help you understand, there was no way Craig could have been lying on his back, because I would never have been able to reach around Craig and get a position on Mr. Bio's right wrist.
So in this case, you've given more detail yesterday, and that should be preferred. And then you said the man was face down, and I think you've explained that today in detail. And then you say, I would say Craig is about 20 stones, and he was still too powerful for us. He kept pulling me in, and I pushed the emergency button for assistance. Now, it may be suggested that you're mentioning PC Walker's weight there. You think it's about 20 stones, because you were trying to describe the weight that was on Mr. Bio, and yet he was still overpowering you and PC Walker. Did you want to say anything about that?
No, I'm not trying to suggest that Craig's or PC Walker's full 20 stones was on Mr. Bio, but the kind of obviously give you a better understanding. I'm not saying that PC Walker was stick thin and easily to move around. Craig is obviously a larger gentleman, and as such wouldn't be very easy to move around. So that's what I'm trying to describe there. I'm not saying that 20 stone was on him. I'm saying that 20 stone of an individual is very difficult to shove out the way, which is obviously what I mean by that.
All right, thank you. And then remaining on page 4 of that statement, paragraph 6, that was the first time I remember seeing Alan Payton. Let's just get that. I'm on the wrong page. So page 4. Paragraph 6 starts, that was the first time, so it's there we go. That was the first time I remember seeing Alan Payton. Do you see that paragraph? And you see, I remember Alan Smith trying to put fast straps on the man, but he grabbed my leg by mistake, and I asked him what he was doing. The man was still face down and still struggling. So that was Mr. Bio was still face down and still struggling. At the point that Alan Smith was trying to put fast straps on him. Thank you. Right, and staying on page 4, please, can we look at paragraph 7? Craig shouted for someone to check for a knife. There we are. I checked the right side from his waist to ankle, and by that time he'd been rolled onto his side and was handcuffed from the front, palm to palm. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Do you remember that now?
Yeah, aye, if that's, aye. I just remember whatever side he'd been rolled onto, I was able to access the opposite pocket.
And then you mentioned the chewing gum
Yeah.
in the right-hand pocket and the gold-coloured mobile phone
Yeah.
you mentioned as well. And you then go on to say, when he was on his side, I took hold of the fast strap to control his legs.
Yeah.
How did you take hold of that?
So, if you imagine that there's a set of legs in between that, it would have just been a case of like that, and that's just to stop Mr. Byle from rolling and basically face planting the road.
Okay.
It's just a way of stabilising a person that's on the side.
Right. And you say, I was there with Craig to my left, controlling his upper body. I was controlling his legs. Alan Smith and Alan Payton were at his head area.
Yeah.
So by this point, which is the final paragraph on page 4 of your PERC statement, you seem to be saying Craig Walker was to your left,
Yeah.
controlling his upper body. That's Mr. Byle's upper body.
Yeah.
You were controlling his legs. You've described holding onto the fast straps. And then PC Smith and PC Payton were at Mr. Byle's head area.
Yeah.
And is that your recollection?
Again, at the present time, I don't recall obviously PC Payton being there, but if I've said it in my original statement, he must have been there.
Right. And then can we turn on to page 5 of your PERC statement, please, just at the top, paragraph 1. And you say, the man had calmed down and wasn't moving or struggling. Alan Smith bent down and put his ear to the man's mouth and confirmed he was breathing. He wasn't responding, so Alan Smith or someone asked for an ambulance. Shortly after that, Alan Payton said the wasn't breathing, maybe the man wasn't breathing.
Yeah.
Alan Smith checked and confirmed this, so we rolled him back onto his back to carry out CPR. So this is the point at which he's on his side and then
Yeah.
he's moved onto his back.
Yeah, that's correct.
So by this time, he'd calmed down. He wasn't moving or struggling by this stage. And it's at that point PC Smith bends down, put his ear to the man, Mr. Byle's mouth, and he confirms at that point he wasn't breathing.
No, I think initially PC Smith bent down and put his ear to the man's, Mr. Byle's mouth and confirmed that he was breathing.
He was breathing.
Yeah.
He wasn't responding. So Alan Smith or someone asked for an ambulance.
Yeah.
And shortly after that, Alan Payton said that he wasn't breathing. Sorry, I misread that. So it was PC Payton that noticed that he wasn't breathing,
Yeah.
according to this recollection.
Yeah.
Do you remember this now, reading this paragraph?
Again, I still don't really remember that.
But you've described already that this
This would
version
be,
was
yeah.
fresher.
This is more accurate, yeah. Because as we kind of go on, I don't now remember the ambulance arriving at all. But obviously it does arrive, and I've got some involvement with that, but I don't remember that just now.
Okay. So looking between sort of the end of page 4 and the beginning of page 5 of your PERC statement, you talk about Mr. Byle being on his side and taking hold of the fast straps and the position of everyone.
Yeah.
And you then immediately go on to say the man had calmed down and wasn't moving or struggling. And looking at that now, I'm trying to get a sense of the timing of that. By the time he's turned onto his side, he's no longer struggling or moving. Is that right?
I've said that in my original statement, yeah.
So by the time he's turned onto his side, he's not moving or struggling.
If I'm on his, I wouldn't know if his upper body was moving or like I said, like I'm only on the legs, so that's the only area that I was kind of focused on, so that's the only area I can comment on, but certainly the legs weren't struggling.
So that was your impression at the time anyway?
Yeah.
Or shortly after? Right. And then very quickly after that, after he's been moved, PC Smith realises he's breathing and PC Payton then realises he wasn't breathing. All right. Right, I'd like to go back to the evidence video timeline, but I'm also conscious that it's nearing half past.
Yes. We'll have a break, 15, 20 minutes. Yes, Ms Graham, when you're ready.
Thank you. PC Tomlinson, we were about to look again at the evidence video timeline, and I'd like to play a section of this from 7:21:38. If we look at page 5 of the spreadsheet, just to put it into context for you while Ms Smith prepares. This page 5 is the point at which your emergency button's been pressed on. You see that on the previous page. PC Smith has transmitted on the airwaves that the mail's secure on the ground. And 7:21:38, you'll see the description: a white van enters the roundabout from North Henry Road and turns right to go south on Henry Road. It pauses behind the other light-coloured vehicle that is stopped at the entrance. And you'll see as we move down page 5, can I refer you to the right-hand side column? Now, I've not referred you to this yesterday or today, but you'll see this is actually, we've heard this is the source of what you can see. And you'll see that there's Gallagher CCTV listed there. That's the footage at the bottom of the screen that we looked at earlier today. And you'll also start to see references to Snapchat. First of all, 7:22:10, Snapchat, and then another one 2 down. And as we look at the screen, you're going to see on the screen some images appear which are actually taken from Snapchat footage. So that's what I'm going to ask you to look at as we look through the footage.
Okay.
It won't last for a long time, but you'll expect it. It'll be coming. And I'm going to ask you. So there's that section, and then there's another section. I'm going to go through both of them.
Okay.
But the first section is 7:21:38 between phase 4, which is 7:21:38 to 7:25:17. But the Snapchat footage actually starts at 7:22:10 and lasts till 7:22:16. So that's on page 5 of the spreadsheet. And what I'm going to do is ask Ms Smith to play that, and then I'm going to ask you some questions.
Yep.
All right. So thank you.
Control Bravo, one officer's been punched in the back of the head, no obvious serious injuries, male secure on the ground. 30 seconds out, 4-1.
It's my fault. If you're alive, you didn't give me an update, please.
Alpha 1 I'm just approaching. I'll give you an update.
Right, so did you see that Snapchat come onto the screen there?
Yeah.
At the right-hand side?
I did, yeah.
I'm going to ask Ms Smith to go back, and there we go. And we'll watch that again. So that starts at 7:21:38. We'll just play that for a few seconds.
Control Bravo, one officer's been punched in the back of the head, no obvious serious injuries, male secure on the ground. 30 seconds out, 4-1.
It's my fault. If you're alive, you didn't give me an update, please.
Alpha 1 I'm just approaching. I'll give you an update.
And if we can pause it there, please. We can see the Snapchat there, and we see officers on Hayfield Road. So this is at the moment it's on the screen is 7:22:13.
Yep.
Looking at that, and I can show you a number of times if that makes it easier, but looking at that, can you identify where you are?
So from looking at that, I think I am the officer So you see, you've got, if you look at the bottom kind of tile of the Snapchat footage, you've got the officer stood up at the feet, and then the officer immediately in front of that you see kind of crouching down. I think that is me. I know it might not look like it. I've got her there, and I believe when the footage plays, you can maybe see I've got glasses as well. I had her in glasses at the time. So whichever officer's wearing, whichever officer has her and glasses is the one I believe to be me.
So at the time you had glasses and hair.
And I didn't have a beard either.
Did you have a beard
No.
then? No. So you did look a little different then in 2015?
Yeah, aye, significantly different.
Right. So who's the officer standing up there?
The one at the feet.
The one on the right, at the feet.
I don't know if it's PC Gibson, which is Daniel Gibson, we've not mentioned him yet, or PC James McDonough, because I know who the other two officers are. So if you look at the officer that you can see kneeling at what would be the head area, you can't see the head of that officer.
So in the far
left, that is PC. I think it's PC Alan Smith.
Right.
And then
to his right. With his back towards us.
I think that's PC Alan Petton, and I say that based upon the body armour cover, the yellow cover. I knew that. I think PC Petton maybe had a bad back, or there is a reason he had a different body armour cover, and I always remember his was different.
All right. And then on the other side, there seem to be two officers. There's one sort of standing, as we look at the screen, it's slightly to the left, and then one crouched down between the two standing officers. And that one's you, is it?
I think the one crouched down between the two standing officers is me, but I don't know in which order. If the two standing officers are PC James McDonough and PC Daniel Gibson, I don't know what way around they would feature.
Can you explain to the chair and the assessors at what stage we see the Snapchat footage, at what stage this was in terms of what you've described? Because previously you hadn't described or mentioned PC Gibson or PC McDonough.
If they're that must be the point at which the leg restraints have already been applied.
Right. So this is towards the end?
Towards the end, yeah.
After the police had control of Mr. Bio?
Yeah, or certainly I had control of his legs. I couldn't speak to what other officers had control of, but it was at the point at which I believe that leg restraints were applied, and I had control of his legs.
That's your impression?
Yeah.
Where's PC Walker?
I don't even know if I can see him on that picture.
And I'd like to play this part of the footage again, so probably from 22:10, and we'll watch it again. And if could you pause it, please? So we see by this stage there's a police car quite close to the officers in Hayfield Road, facing the officers with blue lights on. Do you know who came from that vehicle?
No.
Right. And we see the officer to the right walking round.
Yeah.
Right, and please play that. And at the end of that Snapchat footage, did you see another officer near to the van?
I did, yeah, the one that was kind of like coming off the pavement onto the road.
Yeah, let's have another look at that if we can rewind slightly. And if we have to play it again, that's absolutely fine. It's back the way, I think. There we go. Yes, sorry, we had it. Maybe let's play it again, and that might make life easier. And we'll pause it just there. Did you see that the camera panned round and we could see the fish van?
Yeah.
And now we're looking towards the transit van or the 19.
Yep.
And to the right of that, there's another police vehicle there.
Yep.
Do you know who came out of the vehicle that's on the far right?
No.
And the person who is on Hayfield Road appears to be at the pavement area behind the transit van.
Yeah.
Do you know who that was?
No.
If you watched it again, would it help or?
It's the first time I've been following along with the inquiry, but it's the first time I've ever actually noticed anybody at that point in the van.
Right.
But I don't know who that would be.
I mean, we also see someone with the back of someone with a grey T-shirt.
Yeah.
Through the Venetian blinds.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So you're not sure who that is?
The person in the grey, or?
No, you're not sure who the police officer is?
No, sorry, no.
Right. All right, thank you. And then I'm going to look at the later piece of Snapchat footage, which starts about 7:27:31. So this is later again. (7:27:31). This is in phase 5, and you'll see it on page 8 of the spreadsheet. So we're just going to, just to let you see page 8, you'll see at the bottom of page 8, on the right-hand side, it says Snapchat.
Yep.
So again, this is going to be footage from Snapchat, and you'll see that's at 7:27:31.
Okay.
And we'll play that as well.
I'm heading from Edinburgh. This guy doing the speed, the requirement. I've got him under control now. Thanks.
Look at this. This is just not your average.
Yeah, that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'd like to go back to look at that again. So this is at a later stage. This is after 7:27. And again, let's look at the officers that are there.
Back it, go ahead. Yeah, so the dog handler, I'm heading from Edinburgh. This guy doing the speed, the requirement.
If we pause it there. Do you recognise any of the officers that we see there?
Is it possible to make that bigger? I don't know if that's something we can do.
Yeah, I'm going to show you some enhanced footage.
Okay.
Would you rather see?
It's just
the enhanced footage
just
is
something
the earlier
I
section.
don't know if we can blow that tile up.
No, I don't believe I can pull that that particular tile up. I do have a photograph, but I'm not going to be able to show you the photograph on the screen at the same time as the video footage. Do you see the officer on the right-hand side with the yellow vest standing?
Yeah, so that's PC Walker.
Right. And immediately in front of him, there's someone with his back to PC Walker with dark hair and a dark sleeve and a yellow high-vis jacket. Do you know who that is?
I think with the dark hair, it's maybe PC James McDonough, just because I know he had a
okay.
kind of
And on the
dark hair.
far left, there seems to be an officer standing, again with a dark sleeve and a high-vis yellow jacket.
Yeah, I think that's Sergeant Maxwell.
That's Sergeant Maxwell. In front of Sergeant Maxwell, there's someone dressed in a dark clothing,
Yep.
dark hair. Who's that?
That would be Detective Sergeant Davidson.
And who's standing next to her left?
I think that's PC Alan Smith.
And in front of PC Smith, someone's crouching on the ground with a high-vis jacket.
Yeah, I think that's PC Alan Payton.
And to PC Smith's left, someone standing.
PC Good, Kelly Good.
And in front of PC Good, somebody's crouching down.
This is who I think it's maybe me, because I think I can see glasses on that individual. So I would say the person crouching down in front of PC Good is me. Although it does look like the person at the end next to that figure also has glasses. So
Okay.
I'm not sure.
What were you doing at this time? So this is at 7:27:32.
Again, it looks like I'm just crouching by Mr. Biles' legs.
Right. And then further away from you, there's also someone else crouching down there. Do you know who that was?
the only person left would be PC Daniel Gibson.
All right. Thank you very much. I'd like to look at some enhanced Snapchat footage now, please. So Ms. Smith will bring that up. And this is from the 7:21:38 period. So this is the earlier period of Snapchat that I showed you.
Yeah.
Now, what I'm going to ask Ms. Smith to do is to play the whole thing. You'll see, first of all, that the Snapchat's been removed and is shown at normal time, normal speed.
Okay.
And then the second time it's shown on this footage, you will see it's 400% zoom.
Yep.
And it's 25% speed.
Yep.
So you'll see it twice, but I appreciate you won't have seen it before, so we can
Okay.
play it again if you wish. And thank you. Thank you. So that image, the first phase of that is from the 7:21 period.
Yeah.
And I'd like to look at that again, but to the 400% zoom and the 25% speed. So this footage is timed after you've hit your emergency button.
Yep.
After the airwaves transmission saying the mail is secured on the ground.
Yep.
So it's after that period. And I just want to ask you what's happening there. Do you see that, and we'll go back over that again, you may see that someone is bending a leg up.
Yep.
Did you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So who was that was bending the leg up?
It looks like PC Daniel Gibson.
All right, Daniel Gibson, who came towards the end of the
Yeah.
restraint.
Because the person, now that I see it like blown up,
Mm-hmm.
the person who's standing with the dark coloured hair is, I would say, is James McDonough, because there's a difference in the colour of James and Dan's hair. So.
Right. So the person bending the leg is PC Gibson.
Yeah.
That's your...
That would be
That's
my,
who
my
you-
view from
you-
viewing that, yeah. I don't remember that happening, but from viewing this,
Right.
yeah.
Where were you at this point?
I think I'm currently blocked out of view by the figure standing up, but I'm crouching. I think I'm crouching next to the legs.
Right, so let's play this again just briefly.
That's me coming into view just now.
Right. So you're facing the camera
Yep.
on the other side.
Yeah.
All right. And PC Gibson is now crouching down beside you on
Yeah.
your left. So we can pause it there. So this is the stage at which you're on the other side of Mr. Bio. Right. Where's PC Walker?
So from this, I could see what looks like a strip in front of my face, like a lighter coloured strip, and it looks like PC Walker's lying down, like next to Mr. Boyle.
Right. So PC Walker's lying down at that point.
Yeah.
And that strip, white strip or pale strip near to your face, you think is PC Walker's part of what he's wearing?
I can only think it's maybe as PC Walker's top is ridden up. That's the only, I don't know what else it would be. It doesn't look reflective.
Yeah. So you talked yesterday about the vest.
Yeah.
And the belt, the utility belt's under,
Yeah.
positioned below the vest, and the vest can lift up.
Yeah, but the way that they kind of see if, like, whenever I wear body armour and you've got your utility belt on, utility belt obviously is buckled or velcroed, But if you bend over in your vest will drag your T-shirt with it as well. So you can end up, there'll be occasions when you've bent over and dealing with somebody, or bent over for whatever reason, and you stand up and your black T-shirt's just flapping about because it's actually been ridden up and like removed itself from your trousers.
Right, so it can poke out underneath the vest.
Your T-shirt can ride up underneath your vest.
Right. So if you're wearing something pale under your vest, that can poke out the back.
Yeah, aye. And certainly in my experience anyway, I don't know if it happens to every officer, but certainly I've had it where I've been over and my T-shirt's been lifted out my trousers.
So if you had something pale underneath your vest, you would have the pale thing poking out between your trousers and your vest, and then the vest above it would be the black vest. Yeah,
I don't know if it's necessarily something that he's wearing, or it could be PC Walker's skin. I don't know.
No, that thank you. And then I'd like you to look at the photograph I mentioned a moment ago. That's PERC 03374. And this is a snapshot taken, and you'll see that there are names applied. We've not heard from the witness who did this, but we'll start on the right-hand side. We see PC Walker, the tall person on the right. To his right, the markings say D.I. Robson, so in jeans and a dark-coloured top.
Yeah.
Did you recognise D.I. Robson? Appreciate in that snapshot you don't really see the face.
I'll be honest, I don't know who D.I. Robson is. I've maybe encountered him since that incident, but he could be sitting in this room right now and I wouldn't be able to identify him.
Okay. And then looking on the far left, someone says Police Sergeant Maxwell, which I think is what you just said a moment ago. And then next to Maxwell, moving right, we see a line saying DS Davidson, which I think is what you said a moment ago. Then down, crouched on the ground, PCA Payton, which I think is also what you said.
Yeah.
And then opposite PC Payton, PC Smith standing, facing the camera, which is what you said. To the left of PC Smith, it says PC Good, which I think you said Kaylee Good.
Yeah.
And then in front of Kaylee Good, sort of crouched down, it says PCA Tomlinson.
Yeah.
That'd be you, and that's I think what you said. You were identifying.
I think that's me. Aye.
And then in between, or slightly to the left of PC Good, there's a mark that says PC Gibson in relation to the person crouching down.
Yeah.
So that'd be opposite you, really, opposite your right side.
Yeah.
And then to the right of PC Gibson, to PC Gibson's left, but to the right as we look at this photo, it says PC McDonough.
James McDonough.
Oh, sorry, McDonough. So are you comfortable with those identification?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with
And
that.
in the distance towards, beside that white car, there's the marking DC Connell with a blue jacket on. And do you know DC Connell?
No, my interactions at that time in my service with the CID were fairly limited, so I knew DS Davidson just because as a supervisor, if I had any questions for CID, then she would be a face that I would be able to point out, but no, I couldn't identify who DC Connell would be.
All right. Thank you very much. We can put that away. And now, do you remember yesterday I spoke to you about the images and the positions, and I said to you, we'll be able to fine-tune this tomorrow with some other images. So I'd now like to refer you to 6 images that have been prepared by Mr. De Giovanni, who's here today. And this is the first image, and it shows the 2 vans. You'll see the 19, the transit van, and the fish van. And I think when you talked about getting out of the fish van, you pointed with red circles to yourself and to PC Short. And I would just now like to fine-tune this so that you're comfortable with it. I appreciate it. It's a static image and it's a glimpse or a snapshot. But Mr. De Giovanni's here to allow you to start fine-tuning. Will we start with you, PC Tomlinson? Because I think you did talk about being near the front of the fish van,
Yeah.
maybe nearer to the front driver's wheel.
Yeah.
So
would it
would
just
you
basically, having exited the vehicle, I would have just, I don't know if I would have like touched the vehicle, but certainly that would have been the general direction I'd have been heading towards.
would you like that character to be moved further forward towards the front of the vehicle?
I put it in contact with like what would be the like wheel arch area.
And closer to the wheel? There.
Just trying to think if I've got out the car, out the van, sorry, and shut the door. I don't know whether I'd be like a door's length away, if that makes sense, because I don't know if I would have shut the door and then come back into the vehicle, you know, like
Okay.
maybe doors,
Yeah.
a door's length away.
So are you more comfortable with that position?
Yeah.
And what direction were you facing in?
So if you turn me left, that's it. Aye. So that's the direction I was. So basically, where you see like the first me and the second me, I was like the first. This is weird. The first me was like facing the second me. If that makes sense. I don't know if that is just confusing things.
Yeah, let's just start with the beginning
Yeah.
first of all, and then we'll move on to later. So you're quite comfortable with that position
Yeah,
at the moment?
I'm comfortable with that.
And PC Short, when she got out the fish van, are you
Yeah.
comfortable with her position?
Yeah, I had an awareness she'd got out the van, but I wasn't really paying that much attention to what her position in relation to me was.
So are you subject to that? Are you reasonably comfortable with where she is?
I'd be comfortable with that.
And then let's look at the other van. And you'll see that we have PC Walker there. Are you comfortable with that position? Showing PC Walker.
I don't know if, looking at this, whether or not PC Walker was a little bit further in towards the curb. Or no. Are you able to do my line of sight from that position?
Yes, from the one where you're at the fish van.
No, for the fish van, sorry, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah. If you move PC Walker,
Obviously, at the moment we see.
Yeah, no, that's all right.
Yeah.
if you move PC Walker like back towards the wheel arch, the
Closer
19
to
van.
the van.
Yeah, so move him closer to the van, but then push him further away from me, so he's like towards.
What direction was
Uh,
he facing?
So he was facing just a little bit. So if you turn PC Walker to the right just a tad, so he's facing Mr. Boyle.
So more with his back to the van.
More with his back to the van. Probably too much, sorry. Aye, there or thereabouts.
Right. Are you comfortable with that position?
Maybe just slightly more towards like the front. I don't know if, can't quite tell from this angle, but more towards like the front of the van.
Okay. You mean the front of the van, so pushed away from you, more to the
Yeah,
front
just
of the
pushed
van.
slightly away.
Right.
So like more in line with the wheel.
All right.
Yeah.
And would you like to see your line of sight again
Please,
there?
yeah. Yeah,
If you're not comfortable, please tell us.
no, I'm just trying to remember, trying to put myself back there and remember. I again, there or thereabouts, that would be.
Is that a reasonable indication?
Yeah, I would say that's a reasonable indication, aye.
Right. Let's move on to Mr. Bio.
So he was facing PC Walker, which I think that model's already doing, but within like an arm's reach. So a little bit closer.
A bit closer to PC Walker.
Yeah, but it wasn't like blocking my view, so like I could see the two of them, if that makes sense. Because I was able to see PC Walker do that, so I wasn't,
Right.
my view of that wasn't blocked. So again, there or thereabouts, probably where we've got that just now.
You're quite comfortable with that
Yeah.
position? That's a reasonable indication?
Yeah, I think so.
So that was your view when you came out of the fish
Yep.
van. And then you talked yesterday about you being in an area before the Hayfield Road pavement curves to the left
Yeah.
there at the bus stop.
I don't recall ever being in the bus stop.
I think you said that yesterday.
So by the time I'd kind of got from the van to probably where I am just now, that's when Mr. Bayo had turned around and started to do the kind of like purposeful walk away down like the path that you see
Right.
starting at the bus stop.
And you can see that Mr. Bayo has been positioned on the path.
Yeah,
And think that's in line with one of the circles that you put on the image yesterday.
yeah,
So you talked about, if we focus for the moment on the second you,
yeah.
are you comfortable with your position on the road? Or would you like to be moved?
I can't remember if I was on the road or the pavement.
Had you got as far as the yellow lines of the bus stop?
I don't know. I just remember not being in the bus stop, so I don't know if I'd got as far as those yellow lines, but I certainly don't remember being in the actual the cut-in of the bus stop.
And your own position, what direction were you facing when you were in
Um,
that position?
So it would have been a position of turning, because at this point, as I've got to that point, Mr. Bayo has obviously started to walk back down the path. So I would have been in the process of turning and then following sort of alongside, but instead of being on the path, being on the pavement.
So you're facing the direction of Mr. Bayo as he moves, is
Yeah.
it fair to say?
Yeah.
So your position would have been moving as he moved.
So as he's moved, it's quite difficult to kind of say because it's
Because it's
a
static.
snapshot. Yeah, as he's gone past me, so if he'd have been parallel with me just there, I would have been looking at him. But as he's then gone further down the path, I would have kind of been walking sort of like shoulder to shoulder sort of thing, direction wise anyway.
And so are you happy now that the second you has been moved to reflect that as you
I've
start
turned,
to
yeah.
turn, subject to those limitations, and then Mr. Bayo is shown walking up the path or along that path there?
Yeah.
And is his position a sort of reasonable indication of the way he was going?
Yeah, it's a direct. He would never have been like that far
far
ahead of
from
me.
What was the most that he was apart from you?
If you bring him closer. Yeah, probably about that. Like, because we're talking as he's passed, I've had to then turn and then kind of start to mirror his image.
Yeah.
Mirror his movements. So maybe even a bit closer actually. Like at the point at which I've turned, because I've been able to keep up with him, so I can't have been too far behind.
Is that more of a reasonable indication?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I would be more satisfied with that than where he initially was placed. Yeah.
All right. And he was facing, you said, I think yesterday you said, in the direction of the public house, Gallagher's public
Yeah,
house.
so like just in that general direction, but largely walking up that path. So whatever way that path contoured around the grass, that would have been the way he was kind of facing.
Facing towards the path and walking in
Yeah.
that direction. So looking at that image now, with the explanation that you've given us, are you satisfied that that's a reasonable indication?
Yeah. Yep.
Thank you. Right, let's move on to the second one. So this will be along the path. And it does take a little bit of time to load up the software. So you'll see we're still on Hayfield Road, but the fish van is to the right of this screen, and you'll see that the trees and the grassy area has been recreated. And again, we talked about refining this scene because I think with the red circles it was quite difficult to pinpoint where you were.
It's now probably much easier to see the trees. What I remember was there was no shrubbery in front of me, so the point I deployed my my CS spray, there was no shrubs in front of me, so that was the reason why I placed 2 circles down, because I can see from the trees obviously where Mr. Byle was placed just now there's a clearing, but I don't think we ever got as far as that. So then the other clearing is pretty much where I am just now. In front of me you can see there's obviously just one tree there, but it's certainly a clearing.
So when we see you there, PC Tomlinson, let's talk about where would you like that character to be standing?
If you face that character face that character towards the path.
Towards the path.
Yeah. Sorry, the other way around.
Other way.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. And at the moment, that character's standing on the roadway.
Yeah.
Are you comfortable with that position?
Yeah, there or thereabouts. I don't necessarily know, again, if I was on the dirt, the pavement, or the roadway, but given the distance, I think between the pavement and the path, probably more likely where I am just now.
All right.
I don't recall that gas box, so I don't think I got as far as that, so I think probably that position's reasonable.
Do you want to move yourself closer towards the van, or are you happy being that distance from the gas box or the electricity box?
Could you move the camera so I could,
Yes.
I don't know if it's...
Yeah. Do you want a more pulled out view?
Yeah, just see, it's kind of hard to
Do
describe.
you want to see the van?
Yeah, please.
There we go.
Right, okay. I think... Aye, now that I see the van, if you move my figure to the right, so you've got 3 trees there. You've got the fish tree on the far right, you've got the second tree next to that, probably in line with that second tree. Yeah, somewhere like that, maybe just slightly to the left. Yeah, again, roughly there or thereabouts. I just remember the clearing, there wasn't any bushes.
And when you were there, where was Mr. Byle?
So if you bring Mr. Byle back down the path, because I'd have been mirroring his image, so he would have been...
I think at one point yesterday I asked you how far along the path he'd got, so maybe his current position as far along as he had reached, perhaps.
Seeing it like this in the 3D model, I don't think he'd quite got as far as that. Again, it's quite difficult to tell. I don't remember. I just remember there being a clearing, so it's either at that clearing or the second clearing. I can't remember which one. I just know there wasn't any shrubbery in front of me.
But you'd like Mr. Byle's character to be brought back to closer to you?
Closer to me, yeah. So that he was probably just level with me. Or just, in fact, if you bring him further back down the path towards the fish fan, keep going back. Back a little bit further. Aye. So I would have maybe, having looked at this and the way that I've deployed my CS, and it's obviously curved around, so I must have been slightly in advance of Mr. Byle on the path.
Do you want to see your line of sight?
Please, yeah.
From that position?
Oh, no, that wouldn't have been it, because I could see him.
Right. So would you like Mr. Byle to be in front of or behind that tree?
Probably be, if you bring him...
back towards the van?
Back towards the van, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe just back a little bit more.
Bit more.
Is this from like what would be my eyes, the view?
Well, it's all indicative. Obviously, we don't have your exact
right.
measurements and such like.
It's
but
just I feel like
this
I'm
is
quite
an
close.
indication.
Yeah. An indication. I feel like I'm quite close. Like if this was me looking to my own eyes,
Yeah.
I feel like I'm a little bit closer than.
Well, we can move your position further back and let you see that line of sight if you would
Yeah.
prefer.
Yeah, try that. Aye, I feel like, yeah. Because I don't feel like I was ever like
As close
as that.
before.
I know it's
Are
only
you
an
more,
indication, but
more comfortable with that viewpoint
Yeah.
now, or would you like to be moved further back?
no, I think that viewpoint.
And Mr. Bio's position on the pathway, are you comfortable that that's a reasonable indication of his position?
Yeah, because he wasn't. He only became. So he only came onto the grass shrubbery area when obviously he's charged. But like I said, there was nothing. There was no shrubs in that area, so it must either be this clearing or the next clearing up. But I don't think we ever got as far as the next clearing up.
All right. Can we come out slightly so we can now look? Are you happy with Mr. Bio's
Yeah, I'm happy,
direction
yeah.
that he's facing in?
Yeah.
Now, yesterday, I think when you described where PC Short was, you weren't entirely certain. You thought she was behind you, but you didn't know if it was left or right of you.
Yeah, I just had an awareness that she was somewhere close by, but just behind me somewhere. Like when I say just behind, I don't mean like she was breathing down my neck, but like she was behind me, but not very far. Like she's way too far away, I think.
Would you like her to be closer
yeah,
to you?
just move her closer and offset her to either. I don't know if it was left or right. I don't know.
Right. So subject to that caveat,
Yeah, I don't know.
I think
yeah.
if we can get the position of how far she was from you, that would be
Yeah.
helpful.
I couldn't tell you how close she was
Right.
to me, but like I knew she wasn't like. I couldn't feel her right behind me, but I knew she was there.
What about that position?
No,
Or are you just not confident about her position?
I'm not confident enough to
Right.
commit her to a position because I wasn't actually looking at her.
That's fine. Right. So, looking at you, do you want to see your line of sight again, or are you happy with
No, I'm reasonably happy with what we'd seen.
And was there anyone else around at that time?
No, I don't know where, because my focus now was off PC Walker, so I don't know where PC Walker had gone.
Okay. And then let's look at image number 3, please. Now, I think this is the positioning in relation to where you were when you used your spray.
Yep.
So you'll see as the image starts to load, again, in this image, the character that is you is still quite close to the verge of the grassy area. Mr. Bio has now turned towards you. So I'd like to try and pin down a reasonable indication of where you were when you used your spray.
So see the slide we've just came off, that I
Yes.
would say is probably a reasonable indication as to where I use my spray.
Oh, I see, right.
I don't know if I've maybe jumped a step ahead and described, because that's what I thought we were
Right.
describing.
All right. No, that's fine. So if we try and replicate that here in image 3. So I think you were slightly further back on the pavement of Hayfield Road, facing in the direction of Mr. Bio.
Yep.
And at this point, he's turned to face you.
No, so when I've deployed my CS, it's only after that he's turned into face.
Alright.
So the deployment of CS would have been, which is why I've only contacted this area rather than sort of on the face.
I see.
So Mr. Bio would have been facing towards the.
Right. So, in fact, maybe what we should simply do is say the previous image that we worked on,
Yeah.
you're content that it shows and reflects the position you were in and Mr. Bio was in when you used your spray.
Yeah. So when the initial first.
So the previous image,
yeah,
the chair
first
can
kinda
rely
click.
on for that. And that was, you described yesterday using a short, sharp burst and then holding
Yeah.
your thumb on the button and
Guide the
pushing
spray.
it into the wind.
Yeah,
or
so
moving it round
moving
into
my
the wind.
kind of arm into the wind
Yeah.
so that naturally the spray of the CS canister would curve with the wind and then take it to its intended target.
And so that was the previous, that's spray, that's image 2. And then at some point after you'd used your spray,
Yeah.
then Mr. Bio turned to face you.
Yeah, and I would say this is more reasonable as to where he was positioned then.
Right. Let's say show an indication of where Mr. Bio was.
Yeah,
And so this is this character, the green figure, is now facing towards you.
yeah,
So you've remained in position on Hayfield Road,
yeah. I don't think again.
but it would reflect the one previously.
Yeah, it would reflect wherever I was positioned from like kind of line of sight. But
Yeah.
roughly that's kind of the position we ended up in after the spray was deployed.
So after the spray, he turns to look at you.
Yeah, and again I had no real knowledge of where PC Short was other than I knew she was behind me.
Right. So let's not worry about PC Short. But what we see on the screen here is in a reasonable indication of where Mr. Bio was when he turned to face you
Yeah,
after the spray has been used.
yeah.
Thank you. Right, let's move on to number 4. Now, this image was created, it was, you described as a dynamic thing, but you tried to demonstrate using the purple arrow and
Yeah,
line.
no, it was quite difficult
so
to do that.
this has been recreated on this image, but we'll talk through it and make sure you're comfortable with the positions. So
Yeah,
you'll see to the right-hand side in the area near the trees that I think this is where you described you had used your spray.
yeah,
Mr. Bio had turned to face you and then he started moving towards PC Short.
yeah,
So let's look at Mr. Bio first. His position when he starts moving towards PC Short. Are you happy with that position? Again, it's a snapshot.
When he starts moving, he's on the path.
Yeah. So he's moved from the path that we saw in the previous image.
Yeah, and he's
now moving across the
Yeah.
grassy
So yeah,
tree
when he's
area.
when the charge happens,
Is that a reasonable position, or would you like to move him, or the direction
No,
of him?
I think that's reasonable.
Reasonable. And your position, standing close to him.
So my position would be, now that I've seen the line of sight, more towards the centre of that footpath.
Right, so in the footpath rather than nearer the grassy area.
Yeah, at the pavement, sorry, rather than the footpath. Aye, so that's fine. But then turned around, like so facing the direction of Mr. Bio,
Right.
but not facing directly at him, because that was the point. I was kind of a bit confused as to what his intentions were.
Does that seem
So yeah,
to-
that's
yeah?
and there would
So
be
you're
enough.
in a similar position to your position in the previous image, really.
Yeah, and there would be enough space. I don't know how much space it would necessarily be, but there would be enough space for me to drum a baton and get it out to the side.
So would you like to be moved further away, or?
No, I think that's. maybe pushed me slightly to the left. I know that I wasn't close enough that in pulling my baton out, I didn't connect with Mr. Boyle. I can't recall whether or not I'd managed to get out fully by the time he came past. But yeah, I think I'm more satisfied with that.
Happy with that and happy with the direction you're facing?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, and then we moved on to the roadway of Hayfield Road. And this was the point that you described of the Mr. Bio striking PC short and then her falling. So when you look, well, let's start with Mr. Bio. When you see his position there, and you may want to see it more closer to ground level, I think. You'll see that the fish van's on the right, the silvery grey car is on the left. Are you comfortable with the sort of general area that they're in? Because you spent quite a bit of time yesterday talking about not seeing cars or not being aware of cars.
It's the cars that confuse me. Because I don't remember. I'm not saying they weren't there, but I just don't recall seeing the cars.
Right. Well, let's look at Mr. Biles' position. So he's moved from the tree area into towards the middle of Hayfield Road.
Yeah.
In terms of the direction in which he's facing, at the moment he's facing the south side of Hayfield Road.
Yeah.
This is the moment before he strikes PC short. Are you comfortable with his position there?
Yeah, but I would maybe say more. So see, the direction I think is generally correct, but bring Mr. Byle, move him up the screen a bit.
So closer to the island that we
closer
see.
to the island, sorry, yeah. So yeah, probably more like that. Maybe that's too far, sorry.
All right.
A bit closer. Aye, that'll do.
And PC short in line with him or to one side?
She's closer than that. I don't know. I'm probably just to his left side.
Slightly to his left.
So yeah, slightly to his left, and not close as in touching, but close enough that a punch, if that's an arm's length.
So she's just past the centre line, slightly to the left of Mr. Byle. Is it possible to see that from behind? Yeah. How does that look?
I think everything needs to come closer, to the
Closer
camera.
to the
Because
camera.
that pushes us near the cars, and as I say, I don't remember the cars.
Okay.
Maybe slightly closer again. Sorry.
No,
Hey,
not at all.
yeah. Yeah.
Does that look more like it?
Yeah, I think so.
And he used which hand to strike PC short?
Okay. I can't remember if it was
Can't
right or
remember.
left.
Okay. And then, are you comfortable with both of the positions of those figures?
Yeah, the two standing up, yeah.
Right, let's look at the blue figure on the ground.
Yeah.
And you'll see that reflects a movement by PC short onto the
Yeah.
other side of the road, the Hayfield Road.
Yeah.
Are you reasonably comfortable with that
I
position?
think she was more towards, I haven't looked at it now at this angle, I think more towards the centre line. Not lying across the centre line, but certainly more towards it.
All right.
Bring her back just a little bit more, so maybe a feet touch.
Bit closer to you,
Yeah,
Closer
and
to
closer
us.
to the
right?
to the right hand. What would be the direction of Gallagher's?
So that's the right-hand side
Yeah.
of the screen, so closer to that.
Yeah.
What about that? So at an angle, but really from the centre of the road.
Yeah. Aye. Because the punch to the back of PC Short's head's sent a, like, kind of fall in. But it, as I say, it wasn't just she didn't fall at where she was stood. She went some distance, so I would say, from what I remember, I think that's reasonably accurate.
Great, thank you. And then let's look at image 5. So this is in relation to the stamp that you've
Yeah.
described. And I think yesterday you talked about Mr. Bile being on her right-hand side.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I'm just trying to imagine it. If like,
You talked about her landing face forward with her arms stretched
Yeah.
out.
obviously the model's not got their arms stretched out, but if you bring, I'm trying to think how to describe it. Are you able to go to like the?
Will we start with Mr. Bile?
Aye. So like aye, do that. Aye.
Right, we'll work on his position
Yeah.
first of all.
So he was, see where you've got PC Short lying on the floor.
Yeah.
His position was more towards where what would be her right hand is, if that makes sense.
Right, so closer to her right hand.
Yep, and then tilt
And
Mr. Bile.
what direction was he facing?
So he was facing this direction, but more tilted. So
When you say this direction, you mean
sorry,
towards you?
towards me, yeah.
And tilted, does it
uh,
help if you relate that to the fish van?
Yeah. So see, that's too far. Sorry. So keep tilt a little bit back more to the left, and probably about that.
Okay. So he's facing down Hayfield Road, away from Gallagher's pub,
Yeah.
away from the roundabout at Henry Road,
Yeah.
at a slight angle.
At a slight angle.
And Nicole Short's flat out
Yeah.
on the roadway at that time.
Yeah.
And he's to her, she's face down, so he's to her right.
To her right. Yeah.
Are you comfortable with those positions?
Yeah. Aye.
Yeah. And then let's look at you, the figure PC Tomlinson.
So obviously seeing it as figures, I was much closer than that because I was within
Alright.
striking distance with my arm and a baton.
Okay.
Take me closer still. A bit closer still. I just keep going a little bit closer. Probably about there.
All right.
It's whatever the distance would be for my arm and also the baton.
Right. Do you want to see the line of sight from there?
Please.
Let's do that.
Yeah. Yep.
Are you comfortable with that? Yeah. All right. And before we finish that, please, I'd like to just check your direction. Were you comfortable with the direction you were facing?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
It's reasonable anyway. I
That's
couldn't
great.
say exactly, but I think that's reasonable.
Thank you. And then if we can look at the last image, image 6, this is the one leading to the restraint we spent some time on yesterday. So again, we can start to see the image developing. PC short on the ground, face down. I think on this occasion, her legs are slightly over the central line.
Yeah.
You've got Mr. Bio turning towards you, and then we had Walker on the screen, but we'll focus on what's happening in the middle of the road first. So
Yeah.
Mr. Bio is there, and he seems to be facing you by this stage.
Yeah.
So this is after you've struck him,
Yeah.
and you've explained that earlier. Are you comfortable with the direction he's facing?
Yeah, I don't know necessarily the direction. I just know we're like face to face. So whatever, I'm reasonably happy with those positions. Obviously, they may vary slightly in terms of what we've created where Nicole's lying on the roadway. But again, that general area we've kind of discussed.
Yeah.
But in terms of me and Mr. Bio, who were facing each other.
Facing each other.
Facing
And
each other.
these are reasonable indications. They're not precise, exact measurements. And then PC Short's still lying in the same position on the
Same
ground.
position.
So I think in this case we start to see the arrow or the dart in the road, and that might be in a slightly different position from the previous
Yeah.
image. But are you reasonably comfortable? I think you moved the image closer to the island yesterday because you were concerned about the cars.
I just don't, like I said, I don't remember the cars being there, but I wasn't paying attention to them, so they could have been there. I just don't remember them being there. So that's for me, that's the most confusing part of the whole setup, is seeing those cars.
So is it fair to say that you're not 100% sure whether it was a single central line, or part of the dart in the road as you approach the roundabout?
I'm
but
not sure where.
Subject to that.
It's subject to kind of moving up and down that
Yeah.
section, but as I say, I never paid attention to the cars, so. But the kind of layout, the cluster that you've got, PC Short, Mr. Bio, and myself, I would say is pretty reasonable. It's just that location, kind of moving up and down the road, might vary.
Your recollection isn't as clear.
No.
And then can we pan out of this, please? We had PC Walker in Hayfield Road. You'll remember yesterday you gave evidence about him coming from your left.
Yeah.
And I wondered if, using the figure of PC Walker, you could provide the chair with some further assistance on where he came from.
Yeah. So see where you've got PC Walker now. I wouldn't have been able to see that far because my peripheral vision wouldn't go that far.
Right.
The first of me being aware was when he was in my peripheral vision to my left.
So will we move his figure closer to you?
Closer to me, yeah. But he wouldn't be behind, so he would be slightly in front of me.
So he's now closer to the central line.
Yeah, he would be in line with Mr. Bio, which I think
Right.
he is probably there anyway. But
Yeah. Closer to you again, or is that a reasonable? He's almost at the fish van, in line with the fish van there.
Are you able to go like the line of sight view for me?
Line of sight.
I don't know if that. Oh no. It's not. So I was facing Mr. Bio, and I don't ever remember looking to my left.
Right.
So
So maybe PC Walker would be closer.
maybe, yeah, so closer. I don't know if that makes it more difficult to move him in that picture.
I don't know either. We'll leave that to Mr. Di Giovanni. If we could maybe move Miss PC Walker closer to. And then let's see the line of sight from PC Tomlinson's character. Do you want him closer?
Aye, closer again, think.
I'm sensing maybe you want him quite a bit closer.
Yeah, sorry,
let's,
quite
let's
a bit
bring
closer.
him quite a bit closer. Because you said it was out of your peripheral vision on the left.
Yeah.
Right.
So if I was to face Mr. Bio a little bit more, that's probably where, see that kind of generalised direction towards Mr. Bio. That's when I first became aware of PC Walker, is when he emerged kind of from my left, and that's the first of me really being aware that
Aware
that he was there.
So it really was in your peripheral vision from the left. PC Walker is approaching from the left and he's facing Mr. Bio.
Yeah.
Right, let's pan out and just see if you're comfortable with that image. So that's you facing Mr. Bio at the sort of centre of the road.
Yeah.
PC Walker approaching from the left.
Yeah.
And Nicole Short face down on the ground.
Yeah. That's I'm reasonably happy with that. Yeah.
And we were talking yesterday about PC Walker. I think you've used various descriptions, wrestle or bringing him to the ground. It was from that point he then brought Mr. Bio to the ground.
Yeah. Aye.
All right. Thank you. Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that.
Thank you. Well, that's very helpful. I'm going to move on now to some other questions in relation to standard operating procedures.
It would be a convenient point to stop.
Would, yes.
Yes, thank you. Detective Constable Tomlinson, there's a member of the public, Mr. Akhtar Ali, coming in to give evidence this afternoon. And in order not unduly to inconvenience him, I propose to interrupt your evidence to hear his evidence. I'm told it will not be very long. And then we'll come back to your evidence.
That's fine, sir.
So I hope everybody understood that. We're going to interrupt to hear a short witness, and legal representatives will be aware of his presence. So 2 o'clock. Thank you.